May 2nd, 2025, 10:01 a.m. A frantic 911 call pierces the quiet morning air of Lansdowne Station, Nova Scotia. A mother's voice, panicked. Her children are gone. 6-year-old Lilly Sullivan and her 4-year-old brother Jack have vanished from their rural home, surrounded by dense forest and steep terrain. The last confirmed sighting? Security footage from the day before, showing them at a local dollar store with their family, smiling, alive, unaware that within 24 hours, they would become the center of one of Canada's most perplexing missing persons cases. 8 months later, despite one of the most intensive searches in Nova Scotia's history, despite hundreds of volunteers combing through kilometers of wilderness, despite cutting-edge forensic technology and over 1,000 tips from the public, Lilly and Jack Sullivan remain missing. No bodies, no witnesses, no answers. This is Forensic Disconnect, where we unlock the cases that deserve to be remembered. Tonight, we dive deep into a case that has captivated not just Canada, but the entire world. A case that raises more questions than answers. A case where 2 innocent children walked out of their lives and into the unknown. This is the story of Lilly and Jack Sullivan. Lilly Sullivan was born in March 2019. Her brother Jack followed on October 29, 2020. By all accounts, these were ordinary children living in an extraordinary landscape. Lansdowne Station, Nova Scotia. Population barely a blip on the map. Located in Pictou County, approximately 140 kilometers northeast of Halifax, this is rural Canada at its most remote. The area is characterized by woods, steep banks, and thick brush. Beautiful but unforgiving. To understand this case, you need to understand the geography. Lansdowne Station isn't a town in the traditional sense. It's a sparsely populated rural community where neighbors live hundreds of meters apart, where the forest dominates the landscape, and where the silence at night is absolute. The nearest significant town is New Glasgow, about 20 to 30 kilometers away. This is a place where people know each other, where help can be far away, and where the wilderness is always watching. The Sullivan property on Gairloch Road exemplifies this isolation. Surrounded by dense forest, the home sits in terrain that quickly becomes treacherous. Steep embankments drop away into thick brush. The woods are old growth in places, creating canopies so thick that sunlight barely penetrates. Water sources dot the landscape, from small creeks to larger bodies of water that searchers would later investigate with underwater recovery teams. This is both the beauty and the danger of rural Nova Scotia. It's a place where children can play freely, but also a place where they can disappear completely. The Sullivan siblings lived with their biological mother, Malehia Brooks Murray, and their stepfather, Daniel Martel, on Gairloch Road. The property sat on land that belonged to Martel's mother, Janie Mackenzie, who lived in a separate building on the same property. This living arrangement is important to understand. It wasn't just one household. The property essentially contained 2 residences. Janie Mackenzie, the step-grandmother, lived close enough to hear the children playing, but far enough to be separate. This would later become relevant when she testified about hearing the children on the swings the morning they disappeared. The household also included the couple's 1-year-old daughter, Meadow. So on May 2nd, 2025, the property housed 6 people: Malehia Brooks Murray, Daniel Martel, their baby daughter Meadow, Lilly, Jack, and nearby in the other building, Janie Mackenzie. Daniel Martel would later describe the children to reporters in terms that painted a picture of typical siblings with a close bond. "They're like best friends, not just brother and sister," he said. He noted Jack's love for bugs and dinosaurs, typical interests for a 4-year-old boy fascinated by the natural world around him. He described how Lilly, while fond of girly things, often followed her brother's lead. "They're awesome kids," he told the media. "These weren't troubled children by most accounts. They were enrolled in school. They played together. They had the interests and behaviors of normal young children." Lilly attended Salt Springs Elementary School. She was 6 years old, bright, energetic, described by those who knew her as a typical first grader. Jack, at 4, was not yet fully potty trained, which is not unusual for a child his age, but was described by family as curious and adventurous. The family dynamics, however, were more complicated than they might have appeared on the surface. According to court documents, Brooks Murray moved in with Martel on his mother's property around August 2023, less than 2 years before the children would disappear. This means the blended family situation was relatively new. Brooks Murray brought Lilly and Jack into this household, and within a relatively short time, she and Martel had their own child together, Meadow. The adjustment period for young children in a blended family can be challenging under the best circumstances. But beneath the surface of this blended family, tensions were building that would only come to light after the children vanished. Court documents later revealed that when RCMP investigators asked Brooks Murray whether Martell was ever physically abusive, she alleged that he would try to block her, hold her down, and once he pushed her. These are serious allegations that suggest domestic conflict in the home where Lilly and Jack were living. Martell has vehemently denied these allegations. In response, he stated in a text message to the Globe and Mail, "I did not ever abuse Ms. Brooks Murray." He went further, describing the allegation as a personal attack that unfairly casts suspicion over him when he claims he's been the only one raising awareness about Jack and Lilly. "If I remain in the public eye as a monster, the public's choice is guilty until proven innocent," he wrote. He added emphatically that neither he nor his family had anything to do with the children's disappearance. It's crucial to note that these allegations have not been tested in court, and Martell has not been charged with any offense. In the absence of charges or convictions, we must treat these as unproven allegations while acknowledging they are part of the official investigation record. The children's biological father, Cody Sullivan, had been out of the picture for years, which adds another layer to the family complexity. Court documents suggest he had not seen the children in a few years, but was paying child support until he lost his job 9 months before their disappearance. His absence from the children's lives was complete, 3 years without seeing his own children. The reasons for this estrangement aren't fully detailed in public documents, but it's clear that by the time Lilly and Jack disappeared, Cody Sullivan was essentially a stranger to them. The paternal grandmother, Belinda Gray, would later speak to media to clear up online rumors about her son. She said her son chose to walk away from the children's lives after his relationship with their mother ended. She said he hasn't seen his kids in 3 years. This voluntary absence would later make him an early person of interest when the children vanished, though he was quickly cleared. But there were other troubling signs beyond domestic tensions and absent fathers. The Globe and Mail previously reported on multiple concerning issues inside Jack and Lilly's home. These reports mentioned admitted drug abuse by their stepfather, Daniel Martell. The nature, extent, and timeline of this drug use haven't been fully detailed in public reporting, but the admission itself is significant. Substance abuse in a household with young children is always a concern for child welfare. Even more disturbing were reports of multiple black eyes on the children. Black eyes on young children are often the result of normal childhood accidents, kids run, fall, play rough, but multiple black eyes, combined with other concerning factors, can raise red flags for child protection services. The reports also mentioned controlling behavior that affected their mother. In domestic violence situations, controlling behavior often escalates and can create an unstable environment for children. Financial struggles were also part of the household stress. Money problems can exacerbate existing tensions in any family, and in a blended family situation with an infant and 2 older children, financial pressure can become overwhelming. Perhaps most significantly, a child protection worker had visited the children's home in the months before their disappearance. This visit came after concerns were raised by someone at the children's school, Salt Springs Elementary. What exactly prompted the school to raise concerns? The findings of that investigation remain shielded by privacy laws, but the fact that it happened at all indicates that people who saw these children regularly, teachers, staff, administrators, noticed something troubling enough to report. The paternal grandmother, Belinda Gray, would later call for transparency about this child protection investigation. Just what did CPS do? Gray asked. What part were they investigating? What were their concerns and what were they doing? They might even have answers for the investigation on what happened to them or why it might have happened to them. These are valid questions that remain unanswered. What did the child protection worker observe? What was the outcome of their investigation? Were there ongoing concerns, or were the issues deemed resolved? The privacy laws that shield this information are designed to protect children and families, but in a case where children have vanished, these same laws can frustrate the public's desire for answers and full transparency. This was the world Lilly and Jack Sullivan inhabited in the spring of 2025, a world that contained love and family, but also tension and trouble, a world that was about to be shattered forever. Before we continue with what happened on that fateful morning in May, make sure you're subscribed to Forensic Disconnect and hit that notification bell. We bring you in-depth investigations into real cases every week, cases that demand attention, that deserve justice, that refuse to be forgotten. If you find this case as compelling and heartbreaking as we do, leave a like and let us know in the comments what you think might have happened to Lilly and Jack. Your engagement helps us continue bringing these important stories to light. And if you have any information about this case, please contact the authorities. The RCMP tip line remains open, and every piece of information, no matter how small it seems, could be the key to solving this mystery. Now let's examine the days leading up to their disappearance, because understanding the timeline is crucial to understanding the questions that remain. The last days of April 2025 and the first days of May would become the most scrutinized 96 hours in Pictou County history. Every movement, every decision, every detail would later be examined and re-examined by investigators trying to piece together what happened. Wednesday, April 30th, 2025. This was a professional development day for teachers, so there was no school. For Lilly and Jack, this meant a day at home. According to police records, the siblings, along with their mother Malahia Brooks Murray, stepfather Daniel Martell, and younger sister Meadow, went for groceries together and arrived back home by 10:19 p.m. that evening. The specificity of that time, 10:19 p.m., comes from investigative records that tracked the family's movements in the days before the disappearance. This grocery trip would later be examined for any signs of distress, any indication that something was wrong. But by all accounts, it was nothing remarkable. A normal family outing to buy food and supplies. Think about that for a moment. Less than 36 hours before two children would vanish, they were doing something as mundane as going to the grocery store with their family. There was no indication, no sign, no warning of what was about to happen. Thursday, May 1st, 2025. This would be the last full day of Lilly and Jack's lives as anyone knew it. According to Daniel Martell, both Jack and Lilly were kept home from school this day because Lilly had a cough. This decision to keep them home would later be scrutinized. Was Lilly really sick, or was there another reason they stayed home? Martell stated the reason clearly: Lilly had a cough. But investigators would later note that this was the second consecutive day the children missed school when you count the PD day on Wednesday. The children hadn't been in school since Tuesday, April 29th. Was this significant? Probably not. But in an investigation where every detail matters, even a child's cough becomes part of the timeline. During the afternoon of May 1st, at approximately 2:25 p.m., the entire family traveled to nearby New Glasgow. This trip, unlike the grocery store visit the night before, would become crucial because Jack and Lilly were captured on video surveillance with their family at a Dollarama store. This surveillance footage would become one of the most important pieces of evidence in the entire case. It represents the last confirmed, verified sighting of Lilly and Jack Sullivan outside their home. It's the last time anyone other than family members can definitively say they saw these children alive. In that grainy footage, they appear normal. Two children in a dollar store with their family. Lilly, 6 years old, probably looking at toys or crafts. Jack, 4 years old, perhaps pointing at things he wanted, doing what 4-year-olds do in stores. They were alive. They were with their mother, stepfather, and baby sister. They had no idea they were being filmed for the last time. The timestamp, 2:25 p.m. on May 1st, 2025, would be burned into the investigation. After this moment, after the family left that Dollarama and drove the 20 to 30 kilometers back to their rural home in Lansdowne Station, the confirmed sightings end. What happened after they returned home that afternoon? According to the official timeline, the family went about a normal evening. Later that evening at 9 p.m., Lilly and Jack were put to bed wearing the clothes they were in earlier in the day. This detail is important because it tells us something about the household routine. The children weren't bathed and changed into specific pajamas. They went to bed in their day clothes. Lilly was wearing a pink sweater and pink pajamas with white shapes and a Barbie top. The description suggests she was in actual pajamas despite wearing them during the day, or perhaps she changed into them before bed. She also had a corduroy cream-colored backpack adorned with strawberries. This backpack detail is interesting. Why would a 6-year-old have a backpack with her when going to bed? Was it just nearby, a favorite possession she kept close? Or was there another reason? Jack was wearing black sweatpants, a t-shirt, and a diaper. He was in comfortable clothes, appropriate for a 4-year-old who wasn't yet fully potty trained. They went to sleep, a normal bedtime for two young children. Parents everywhere can relate to this moment. The end of the day, children tucked into bed, the house finally quiet. But this night was different. This night, something happened. Something that would change everything. What happened between 9 p.m. on May 1st and 10:01 a.m. on May 2nd remains one of the central mysteries of this case. 13 hours. That's the window we're looking at. 13 hours during which 2 children went from sleeping in their beds to completely vanishing. But according to court documents released months later, something unusual may have been occurring in the early morning hours of May 2nd, during those dark hours when most people are asleep, and the rural landscape of Lansdowne Station is absolutely silent. 2 people who live near Lilly and Jack Sullivan's home told police they heard a vehicle coming and going in the middle of the night, just hours before the Nova Scotia children were reported missing. In the deep silence of rural Nova Scotia at night, sounds carry. A vehicle engine starting, tires on gravel, these sounds would be noticeable to anyone awake in the area. On May 9th, 7 days after the children disappeared, 2 constables spoke with a neighbor named Brad Wong who lives near the Sullivan home. He told them he heard a loud vehicle coming and going from that area in the early morning hours of May 2nd. Wong's residence, he explained, is at an elevated position from Daniel's residence, and he could see vehicle lights over the treetops. This is a crucial detail. He didn't just hear something. He saw lights. Vehicle headlights moving through the darkness visible above the tree line. He said the vehicle left 3 or 4 times after midnight and into the early hours of the morning. 3 or 4 times. That's not someone making a single trip for an emergency or a forgotten item. That's multiple trips back and forth during the hours when most people are asleep. Another witness, Justin Smith, told investigators he was awake and on Facebook during the early hours of May 2nd. The timestamp he provides is specific, around 1:30 a.m. He heard a car on Highway 289 turn around by the railroad tracks near the area of Gairloch Road and Lansdowne Station Road, the intersection near the home where the children went missing. It made noise, then went quiet, Smith reported. The vehicle was quiet for about 2 minutes, then drove towards Lairg Road. Why would a vehicle stop, go quiet for 2 minutes, then drive away? What happens during those 2 minutes of silence? Even more disturbing, Smith later spoke with Brad Wong, who informed him that Daniel's vehicle came and went 5 or 6 times that night. 5 or 6 times. That's even more than Wong initially reported to police. The number increased in the telling, which could indicate uncertainty or could suggest the actual number of trips was higher than initially remembered. When confronted with these witness statements, Daniel Martel gave a clear response. In a phone interview, he said no one from the family left the property that night, and they did not have any visitors. He said the only vehicle that left the yard was on the morning the children went missing, when he took Brooks Murray's SUV to look for the children after discovering they were gone. It's not loud by any stretch of the imagination, Martel said of the vehicle, pushing back against descriptions of a loud vehicle. He added that the RCMP never asked him about the vehicle coming and going, which, if true, would be a significant oversight in the investigation. However, there's a crucial detail that complicates this entire line of inquiry. The Nova Scotia RCMP later stated they aren't able to substantiate reports of a vehicle driving late at night near the rural home and don't consider that information a key element in their investigation. This is a significant statement from investigators. Witnesses reported hearing a vehicle but did not visually confirm one, RCMP Communications Advisor Allison Gerard said in a statement. Wait, but Brad Wong said he saw lights over the treetops, so he did visually confirm vehicle lights, even if he didn't see the vehicle itself. This seems like a contradiction in the official statement. Gerard continued. Investigators conducted a thorough review of surveillance footage from the Gairloch Road area during the early hours of May 2nd and found no evidence of any vehicle activity at that time. This is where the case becomes truly puzzling. 2 witnesses report hearing a vehicle, one reports seeing lights, but surveillance footage shows nothing. How is this possible? There are several potential explanations. First, the witnesses could be mistaken. Memory is fallible, especially about events in the middle of the night. Perhaps they heard something else, an animal, another sound that they interpreted as a vehicle. Perhaps the lights Brad Wong saw were from a different source or a different night, and in the aftermath of the disappearance, memories became conflated. Second, the surveillance footage might not cover all areas. Rural properties are large, and camera coverage is often limited. Perhaps there were blind spots, areas where a vehicle could come and go without being captured on any camera. Third, the timing might be off. Perhaps there was vehicle activity, but at a different time than the witnesses remember, outside the window that investigators focused on. Fourth, and this is the explanation that fuels the darkest theories, someone could have deliberately avoided camera coverage, taking routes or using timing that wouldn't be captured on surveillance. But this would require knowledge of where cameras were located and what they covered. So what really happened that night? Did a vehicle come and go multiple times, or not? Why do witness accounts contradict surveillance footage? These questions remain unanswered, and investigators have publicly stated they don't consider this a key element of their investigation. This decision to downplay the vehicle reports is interesting. It suggests that either investigators have definitively ruled out this line of inquiry, or they have information they haven't shared publicly that explains the contradiction. What is certain is what happened next. In the morning hours of May 2nd, when the Sullivan household woke to discover Lilly and Jack were gone. Friday, May 2nd, 2025. The sun rose over Lansdowne Station at approximately 6:15 a.m., painting the dense forests in early morning light. An alarm went off in the Sullivan household, and Malehia Brooks Murray made a phone call to the children's school, booking Jack and Lilly off sick. This was the second consecutive school day they would miss, the third day overall when you count the PD day. At the time, this seemed like a normal decision. Lilly had a cough. Keep the kids home, let them rest. Except by the time this call was made, were Lilly and Jack still in the house? According to the timeline later provided to police, Brooks Murray said she woke that morning to the sound of the children playing in the next room. This suggests they were alive and active early in the morning. She could hear them. The house wasn't large. Sounds carried. She briefly fell back asleep. This is a detail that would later be questioned. How long is briefly? Minutes? An hour? When you have young children in the house, falling back asleep after hearing them awake is common, but it also means losing track of them. Upon waking again and discovering they were no longer in the house, she immediately called 911. At exactly 10:01 a.m., Malehia Brooks Murray reported Lilly and Jack missing from their home in rural Lansdowne Station. The 911 call would have been recorded, as all such calls are, though the contents haven't been made public. We can only imagine the panic in a mother's voice realizing her children are gone. The mother told police that both children were possibly autistic and known to roam. This is an important detail. Children with autism spectrum disorder sometimes engage in wandering behavior, known in the autism community as elopement. They might leave a safe space without fully understanding the dangers. If Lilly and Jack were possibly autistic, and possibly is the word used, suggesting they may not have had formal diagnoses, this could explain a tendency to wander off. The phrase known to roam suggests this had happened before. Had the children wandered off previously? Had there been other incidents where they were found outside the property? If so, those previous incidents would have established a pattern that made the parents' explanation more plausible to investigators. Their boots were gone. This is a detail that supports the theory that the children left on their own. If someone had taken them, would the children have had time to put their boots on? The fact that their boots were missing suggests they either put them on themselves or someone helped them put boots on before they left, which would be an odd detail for an abduction. The couple told investigators that the siblings had possibly slipped out of their sliding door as the parents slept in another room with their infant child. Possibly is doing a lot of work in that sentence. They didn't see the children leave. They're reconstructing what they think happened. The sliding door becomes a key element of the story. Brooks Murray said that Martell had put a wrench on top of the front door the night before, and it had not been disturbed. This is a makeshift security measure, placing a heavy object on a door so that if it opens, the object falls and makes noise. The fact that the wrench was undisturbed meant the front door wasn't used. So Martell surmised that the siblings must have gone out the back sliding door, which he also stated was typically silent when opened. A silent door is convenient for this explanation. The children could have slid it open without waking anyone, but it also means there was no audible alert that they were leaving. Brooks Murray stated that she and Martell then looked for the siblings outside, yelling out for them. Picture this scene. Two parents, suddenly realizing their young children are missing, running outside in the morning, calling their names. The property is surrounded by dense forest. Their voices would have echoed into the trees. If the children were nearby, if they had just wandered a short distance, they should have heard their parents calling. Daniel Martell told RCMP officers he ran outside, got in his car, and drove around, then ran around in the woods looking for the missing pair for hours. Hours. Martell would later describe these desperate search efforts to reporters in vivid terms. I was ahead of the helicopters, ahead of the drones, screaming loud as I can until my throat hurt, running through water that was up to my waist, he said. They hate being wet and cold, so they immediately would have come back into the house. This statement reveals Martell's thinking. He knew the children's aversion to being wet and cold. He believed this aversion would have driven them back home if they had simply wandered off. The fact that they didn't return, in his mind, suggested something else was at play. Martell told police that while initially searching in the forest, he thought he heard a scream that sounded like it could have been Jack or Lilly. This is a chilling detail. A scream in the woods. Was it one of the children? Was it an animal? Was it his imagination, his desperate mind interpreting natural forest sounds as his missing stepchildren? But then a helicopter flying overhead made it impossible to hear anything further. By the time the helicopter passed and the noise faded, there was only silence. Police arrived at the scene at 10:27 a.m., just 26 minutes after the initial call. This is actually a reasonable response time for a rural area. The RCMP would have dispatched the nearest available unit, but in rural Nova Scotia, even the nearest unit can be some distance away. But by then, Lilly and Jack Sullivan had vanished. If they left the house under their own power, they had been gone for some unknown amount of time. If they woke up early, they could have had hours of head start into that vast wilderness. At 12:25 p.m. ADT on May 2nd, 2 hours after police arrived on scene, the Royal Canadian Mounted Police issued a public statement notifying the public about the disappearance and asking anyone who may have information to come forward. The decision to go public quickly was important. In missing children cases, the first hours are crucial. At the time, police stated their belief that the children had wandered away from their home and that there was no evidence of abduction. This statement would shape the entire initial response. No evidence of abduction meant no Amber Alert. RCMP said the siblings were believed to have wandered away. They noted that there was no evidence of abduction, so it didn't qualify for an Amber Alert. This decision would become controversial and remain so. An Amber Alert is a child abduction emergency alert system. It's designed for situations where a child has been abducted and is in imminent danger. The criteria for issuing an Amber Alert are specific. Law enforcement must confirm an abduction has taken place, the child must be at risk of serious bodily harm or death, and there must be enough descriptive information about the child, abductor, or vehicle to help aid in recovery. In this case, investigators determined there was no evidence of abduction. 2 young children, possibly autistic, known to roam, boots missing, silent door leading outside. The evidence suggested they wandered off, but many in the public questioned this decision. 2 children under 7 years old are missing from a rural home surrounded by dangerous wilderness. Does it matter whether they wandered or were taken? Either way, they're in danger. The counter-argument from law enforcement would be that Amber Alerts are specific tools for specific situations, and misusing them can lead to alert fatigue where the public stops paying attention. But for many watching this case unfold, it felt like a missed opportunity to mobilize the entire region immediately. At 4:55 p.m., police issued an update advising that a vulnerable missing persons advisory had been issued for Pictou County and asking the public to stay clear of the area where the disappearance is said to have taken place. A vulnerable missing persons advisory is different from an Amber Alert. It's used when someone who is vulnerable due to age, mental state, or medical condition has gone missing. This was the designation the children received. The request for the public to stay clear is standard in these situations. Well-meaning volunteers can contaminate a scene, destroy evidence, or get lost themselves, creating additional emergencies. But even in those first hours, there were complications that would muddy the investigation. At 12:45 a.m. on May 3rd, just after midnight and nearly 15 hours after the initial 911 call, Brooks Murray called police again to report that the siblings' estranged biological father, Cody Sullivan, may have taken the children across the border to New Brunswick. This call introduces a new element. Why did Brooks Murray suspect the biological father? What made her think, hours after the disappearance, that he might be involved? New Brunswick is the province immediately to the west of Nova Scotia, connected by land. If someone wanted to leave the province by car, New Brunswick would be the most direct route. Police response to this call was immediate and thorough. It included a visit to Cody Sullivan's home at 2:50 a.m., less than 2 hours after Brooks Murray's call. Officers woke him in the middle of the night. He stated he had not seen Jack or Lilly for 3 years. 3 years. His own children, and he hadn't seen them in 3 years. The paternal grandmother, Belinda Gray, would later confirm this, stating that her son chose to walk away from the children's lives after his relationship with their mother ended. So at 2:50 a.m. on May 3rd, police confronted a man who hadn't seen his children in years, asking if he had taken them. The answer was no, and investigators quickly moved on. Police later made a request to obtain camera footage at the Cobequid Pass, which is a toll plaza located on the Trans-Canada Highway on the route to New Brunswick. This shows how seriously they took Brooks Murray's concern. They checked the toll plaza cameras to see if any vehicles matching descriptions had passed through. The biological father was quickly ruled out. He hadn't seen the children. He didn't take them. Whatever happened to Lilly and Jack, Cody Sullivan wasn't involved. The focus shifted back to Lansdowne Station, to that rural property surrounded by wilderness, to the question of how two small children could simply vanish, and the massive search operation was just beginning. What followed in the days and weeks after May 2nd was one of the most intensive search operations in Nova Scotia's recent history. When children go missing, especially young children in a rural area, the response is immediate and overwhelming. Resources from across the province and beyond are mobilized. On May 3rd, the day after the disappearance, police and volunteers numbering at least 100 searched the area surrounding the siblings' home using ground search, dogs, drones, and helicopters to aid in the search. 100 people, fanning out across rough terrain, searching for two small children. By May 4th, just 2 days after the disappearance, the number of people searching had reached 160, according to RCMP Staff Sergeant Curtis McKinnon. Think about that scale. In 48 hours, the search operation had grown to 160 people actively searching. The initial search for Lilly and Jack Sullivan spanned 8.5 square kilometers of mostly dense woods and involved about 160 ground search and rescue volunteers, service dogs, drones, and helicopters. Let's put that in perspective. 8.5 square kilometers is 850 hectares, or just over 2,100 acres. That's an area roughly 3 kilometers by 3 kilometers. In dense wilderness, this is an enormous area to search thoroughly. The terrain wasn't easy. Mostly dense woods means thick underbrush, fallen trees, areas where visibility is measured in meters, not kilometers. Ground search and rescue volunteers are trained for this work, but it's exhausting and dangerous. Service dogs, specifically trained to track human scent or detect human remains, are invaluable in wilderness searches. These dogs can cover ground faster than humans and detect scents humans would never notice. Drones provided aerial coverage, able to access areas too dangerous for ground searchers and providing a bird's-eye view of the landscape. Helicopters, equipped with thermal imaging technology, could detect heat signatures from above, potentially locating children even if they were hidden under forest canopy. The search covered this ground in rainy and foggy conditions. This isn't a minor detail. Rain washes away scent trails that dogs would follow. Fog reduces visibility for both ground searchers and aerial assets. The weather was actively working against the search efforts. Daniel Martel would later describe his own desperate search efforts to reporters in terms that convey the frenzy and desperation of those first hours and days. I was ahead of the helicopters, ahead of the drones, screaming loud as I can until my throat hurt, running through water that was up to my waist, he said. This image is vivid. A stepfather, regardless of whatever other issues existed in that household, describing himself pushing beyond the official search efforts, wading through waist-deep water, screaming himself hoarse. They hate being wet and cold, so they immediately would have come back into the house, he said, expressing his reasoning for why the wandering theory didn't make sense to him. If the children had simply walked into the woods and encountered cold water or rain, their natural aversion to being wet and cold should have driven them back. But there was nothing. No response to the calling. No cries for help echoing back through the trees. No small footprints leading deeper into the woods beyond the initial boot prints that were found. No signs of two frightened children huddling together against the cold. The silence was absolute. Then came the first pieces of evidence, sparse as they were. On May 2nd, the same day the children were reported missing, searchers found a piece of pink blanket in the woods near the family home. This blanket was confirmed to belong to Lilly Sullivan. It was found less than a mile away from the house, approximately 1,600 meters, or about a 15 to 20-minute walk for an adult, longer for small children. The location where the blanket was found became significant. It was in the direction one might expect children to wander if they left through the back door and simply walked into the woods. Later, on May 4th at 9:09 p.m., the RCMP announced they found another piece of the pink blanket near the family house, inside a trash bag at the end of the driveway. This second piece raises questions. Why was part of the blanket in a trash bag at the end of the driveway? Was this trash that had been put out before the children disappeared? Was it connected to their disappearance, or purely coincidental? The RCMP stated the blanket was being analyzed, but the results of that analysis have never been made public. What could analysis reveal? DNA, certainly, confirming it belonged to Lilly. Perhaps other trace evidence, plant material, soil, anything that could indicate where the blanket had been. But apparently, this analysis didn't yield any breakthrough because the case remained stalled. Investigators also examined clumps of boot prints in two sizes that were found in nearby woods. Two sizes suggest two children. Police later confirmed those imprints matched the type of boot Lilly was wearing when she disappeared. Presumably, Jack's smaller boot prints were also matched. These prints would have been photographed extensively, their location mapped, their direction of travel noted. Were the prints heading deeper into the woods or wandering aimlessly? Were they together, suggesting the children stayed side by side or separated? The RCMP haven't released these details publicly, but that was it. 2 pieces of a pink blanket and some boot prints. In over 2,100 acres of searched wilderness, this was all that remained of Lilly and Jack Sullivan. No clothing beyond the blanket, no personal items, no signs of a shelter or hiding spot that children might create, no further tracks beyond the initial prints. It was as if the children had simply evaporated. The siblings' mother, Malahia Brooks Murray, spoke to CTV News and stated that she was still hopeful the children would be located, saying, "We just want them home as soon as possible." She further elaborated, saying that the night of May 2nd was one of the worst nights because I didn't have them in their beds, and I don't want to go another night without them. The anguish in that statement is palpable. A mother who, regardless of whatever other circumstances existed in that household, was experiencing every parent's worst nightmare. Nova Scotia Premier Tim Houston released a statement saying people in Pictou County and across Nova Scotia are praying for a positive outcome for 2 missing children. During this time of worry, please know that our first responders and volunteers are working tirelessly during this 24/7 operation. The case was already becoming a provincial concern, dominating news coverage and social media discussions. On May 6th, Martel told CBC News that after the siblings' disappearance, their mother left the area to be with her family in another part of Nova Scotia and blocked him on social media. This detail reveals the fracturing of the parents' relationship under the unimaginable pressure of having 2 children vanish. Within days of the disappearance, Brooks Murray had physically left the property and cut off digital communication with Martel. Was this related to pre-existing tensions in their relationship, or purely a response to the stress of the situation? We don't know, but it's clear the household that existed on May 1st had completely disintegrated by May 6th. The search continued relentlessly, expanding into more specialized areas. On May 8th, police announced the RCMP's underwater recovery team searched bodies of water around Lansdowne Station. This deployment of underwater recovery teams indicated investigators were preparing for the possibility that the children had drowned or that their bodies had been placed in water. The operation lasted 2 days but didn't uncover any evidence. Martel's mother, Janie Mackenzie, who lived in a separate building on the same property, provided testimony that would become crucial to the timeline. She said she fell asleep around 8:50 a.m. on May 2nd and awoke to the sound of her dog barking. She then heard Jack and Lilly playing on the swings and laughing in the backyard before she fell back asleep. This testimony, if accurate, meant the children were still alive and on the property well into the morning of May 2nd, possibly less than an hour before they were reported missing at 10:01 a.m. But it also raised questions. If they were playing and laughing on the swings around 9 a.m., visible and audible, how did they then vanish so completely in the following hour? Were they really on the swings, or did Mackenzie's memory confuse the timing? Did she hear them on a different morning, and in the trauma of the disappearance believe it was May 2nd? Or were they truly playing at 9 a.m., only to disappear within the next 60 minutes? Then came the devastating announcement that would change the tone of the entire search. On May 7th, 5 days after the disappearance, police announced that the search for the missing children had been scaled back. Staff Sergeant McKinnon stated that there had not been any confirmed sightings of the children and that it was unlikely they were still alive. "We're not packing up and we're not giving up," said Staff Sergeant Curtis McKinnon, District Commander for Pictou County District RCMP, but the qualifier was clear. The massive ground search was being scaled back. RCMP said it has been an all-hands-on-deck effort and that while they are scaling back the full search to look at more specific spaces, they are not ending their efforts. But for many in the community, this felt like giving up. How could 2 small children simply vanish? The search had been massive. Ground search and rescue teams had combed every inch of accessible terrain. Helicopters with thermal imaging had scanned from above. Cadaver dogs had been deployed. Divers had searched every body of water. And yet, nothing beyond a blanket and boot prints. On May 17 through 19, Ground Search and Rescue conducted a secondary search in and around the residence, attempting to ensure nothing had been missed in the initial search. But again, nothing was found related to Jack or Lilly. On May 18th, a renewed search took place with 115 volunteers in addition to police personnel. Amy Hansen, one of the search managers, said 115 people searched for the missing Sullivan children on that Sunday. We're not anticipating continuing tomorrow, but that's a conversation that has to happen with the RCMP incident commander later on in the day, she said. The ground search ended, for now. Robert Parker, warden for the municipality of the county of Pictou, expressed what many in the community were feeling. We haven't even found one iota, it appears, of what happened to little Lilly and little Jack, Parker said in an interview. It's hard to believe that many people look for that long, including search parties from all over this province, and the RCMP have been involved since day one, lots of other looking and trying, but not one iota that I've heard of anyway as to a hint as to where the two little ones went. Parker said residents were feeling anxious and frustrated by the many questions left unanswered. How could this happen in their community? How could children vanish so completely? The investigation shifted from active search to detective work, focusing on piecing together timelines, interviewing witnesses, and trying to understand what happened. And what investigators found would only deepen the mystery. On May 28th, nearly 4 weeks after the disappearance, a RCMP Major Crime Unit representative disclosed that the siblings were confirmed to have been observed in public with family members on May 1st, the day before they were reported missing. The location was not made public initially, but it was later revealed to be the Dollarama store in New Glasgow, where surveillance footage captured them at 2:25 p.m. Martel told CBC News that the police had retrieved surveillance footage of himself, Brooks Murray, their 1-year-old baby Meadow, as well as Lilly and Jack in nearby New Glasgow, but that the precise details about the location of where the footage took place could not be disclosed because it may impact the ongoing investigation. This footage became critical as the last confirmed sighting of the children outside their home. Police were also asking anyone who has dashcam footage or video along Gairloch Road between 12 p.m. on April 28th and 12 p.m. on May 2nd to contact them. This was a 4-day window, suggesting investigators were interested in traffic patterns, who came and went from the area in the days surrounding the disappearance. A resident who lives near where the children went missing said police had collected hours of footage from the 7 trail cameras scattered around her 16-hectare property. Trail cameras, typically used by hunters and wildlife enthusiasts, capture motion-activated footage. In a rural area with limited traditional surveillance, these trail cameras could potentially have captured crucial evidence. The RCMP was gathering every piece of video evidence they could find, building a comprehensive picture of movement in the area. On June 11th, the Royal Canadian Mounted Police Agency provided an update on the case stating that their intensive approach to the investigation is continuing. The police agency elaborated that the investigation may take longer than they had hoped, and that they are considering all possible scenarios and are partnering with agencies across the country. The agency said more than 11 Nova Scotia RCMP units are working on the case, including the Major Crime Unit and the Criminal Analysis Service. This level of resource commitment indicated the seriousness with which authorities were treating the case. Major crime units are typically reserved for homicides and serious violent crimes. The fact that this was still technically a missing persons case, but had major crime unit involvement, suggested investigators were not ruling out foul play, regardless of public statements. The case was growing more complex by the day, and then came another investigative tool that would generate both answers and more questions: the polygraph tests. The RCMP conducted multiple polygraph examinations of people connected to the case. Polygraphs, often called lie detector tests, measure physiological responses like heart rate, blood pressure, respiration, and skin conductivity while a person answers questions. The theory is that deceptive answers will produce measurable physiological responses. However, polygraphs are controversial. They're not admissible as evidence in Canadian courts because their reliability is disputed. They can produce false positives and false negatives. They can be beaten by people who know how to control their physiological responses. They can show deception in truthful people who are nervous or emotional. Despite these limitations, police still use polygraphs as an investigative tool, particularly to rule out suspects or to guide further investigation. The RCMP said in court documents they had conducted at least a half-dozen polygraphs during their investigation. The first 2 were on May 12th, 10 days after the disappearance, with the children's parents at the detachment at Bible Hill, Nova Scotia. Martel's polygraph indicated he was truthful, as did the test for Brooks Murray. Both parents passed. This is significant. If investigators believed the parents were directly involved in harming the children, you would expect at least one of them to show deception. The fact that both passed their polygraphs on May 12th suggested that, at least at that point in the investigation, they were not considered primary suspects. An unidentified investigator's comment included at the end of a section of a document on the results of the parents' polygraph states, "At this point in the investigation, Jack and Lily's disappearance is not believed to be criminal in nature. I do not have reasonable grounds to believe a criminal offense has occurred. Because Jack and Lily are still missing, polygraph examinations were conducted with the intention of ruling out that possibility." This statement is revealing. Investigators were administering polygraphs not because they had evidence of a crime, but to rule out the possibility that the parents were lying about what happened. On June 10th, Janie McKenzie, step-grandmother of the two missing children, underwent a polygraph exam at the Bible Hill detachment. However, another document notes that her physiology was not suitable for analysis and an opinion on the polygraph examination was not rendered. This sometimes happens with polygraph tests. Certain medical conditions, extreme stress, or other factors can make a person's physiological responses too irregular to get a reliable reading. The fact that Mackenzie's test was inconclusive doesn't indicate deception, just that the machine couldn't get a clear result. On June 12th, Cody Sullivan, the children's biological father who hadn't seen them in 3 years, underwent a polygraph at an RCMP detachment whose location is redacted. He passed the examination, with his answers found to be truthful. This definitively ruled out the biological father, who had already been dismissed as a suspect due to his 3-year absence from the children's lives. On July 2nd, Cindy Murray, the children's maternal grandmother, and her boyfriend, identified as Wade Paris, also underwent polygraph examinations, and both were found to be truthful. So everyone tested passed. The parents, the biological father, the maternal grandmother, and her boyfriend. If no one failed a polygraph, if everyone told the truth, then what happened to Lilly and Jack Sullivan? This is the central paradox of the case. Either everyone is telling the truth and the children genuinely vanished through some scenario no one has yet imagined, or someone beat the polygraph, or the polygraphs are simply not capturing the full truth. On June 19th, the Nova Scotia government announced a significant development. The province was offering a reward of up to $150,000 for information about the disappearance of siblings Lilly and Jack Sullivan. This is a substantial reward. The disappearance of Jack and Lilly Sullivan is felt across the province and beyond, and my heart goes out to the family, the community, and everyone who has been working to find these children since day one, said Becky Druhan, Attorney General and Minister of Justice. Police and investigators are working tirelessly to find answers, and I urge anyone with information to please share this with the RCMP as soon as possible. The reward amount would be based on the investigative value of the information provided. This means the full $150,000 would only be paid if the information directly led to locating the children or solving the case. Lesser amounts might be paid for information that significantly advanced the investigation. As of October 2025, the government of Nova Scotia continues to offer this reward of up to $150,000 for information that is deemed to be of investigative value to the search for the missing siblings. But even with this financial incentive, no breakthrough came. The case was generating massive attention, but attention doesn't always translate to answers. The children's story garnered national and worldwide attention. News outlets across Canada covered the case extensively. International media picked up the story. Social media exploded with discussion, theories, and unfortunately, harmful speculation. Candlelight vigils were held. The community of Lansdowne Station and surrounding areas rallied, organizing memorials and awareness campaigns. Missing posters were everywhere, showing the faces of 6-year-old Lily and 4-year-old Jack. At a vigil held October 29th, a particularly poignant date as it marked Jack's 5th birthday, the children's stepfather said he no longer believed the children were in the woods near the home. Daniel Martel said that in light of all the searches and efforts, he did not find it plausible that the children were still in the area. This represents a shift in Martel's thinking. Initially, he had searched the woods desperately, believing they had wandered off. Now, months later, he was publicly stating his belief that they weren't there. If not in the woods, then where? Without answers, social media and online content creators more than filled the void, sometimes mashing facts with misinformation and speculation. True crime. YouTubers, TikTokers, and podcasters picked up the case. Some provided thoughtful analysis. Others engaged in wild speculation, accusing various people without evidence, spreading conspiracy theories, and treating the tragedy like entertainment. RCMP Staff Sergeant Rob McCammon acknowledged that while these online communities help keep the case in the public eye, they can also hamper the investigation. It takes investigators time and resources to look into tips garnered from what in some cases has turned out to be just a comment made on social media, he said. Investigators have to follow up on every tip, even those that originate from baseless social media speculation. This diverts resources from more productive lines of inquiry. The paternal grandmother, Belinda Gray, shared her family's story in the hopes of keeping the case in the public eye. Gray said she believes the children are no longer alive. This was a painful admission from a grandmother who had already been through the trauma of watching her son walk away from his children years earlier, and now faced the reality that she would likely never see them again. She also cleared up online rumors about her son, Cody Sullivan. She said her son chose to walk away from the children's lives after his relationship with their mother ended. She said he hasn't seen his kids in 3 years. This public clarification was necessary because online speculation had painted various narratives about the biological father's involvement, despite police clearing him early in the investigation. Gray later called for a public inquiry into the disappearance. Just what did CPS do? Gray asked, referring to Child Protective Services. What part were they investigating? What were their concerns and what were they doing? They might even have answers for the investigation on what happened to them or why it might have happened to them. These questions reflect the frustration many family members and community members feel. There were warning signs. A child protection worker had visited the home. The school had raised concerns. Were these issues adequately addressed? Could the disappearance have been prevented? As months passed, court documents began to be unsealed, revealing previously unreported details of the investigation. The public's right to know was being balanced against the integrity of an ongoing investigation, and media organizations successfully argued for the release of redacted information. The documents showed the scope of the investigation was staggering. Police sought 12 search warrants between May 16, 2025 and July 16, 2025. These warrants would have covered everything from phone records to financial records to surveillance footage to physical searches of properties. The documents reveal that Brooks Murray provided a statement to police saying she used a smartphone messaging application called Text Plus to call her mother and her grandmother after Lilly and Jack went missing. She explained she used this because it allowed her to make phone calls using a wireless internet service. This isn't unusual. Many people use apps like Text Plus, WhatsApp, or similar services, especially if they have limited cell service or want to use Wi-Fi for calls. But Brooks Murray told police she later deleted the software because she didn't need it anymore. This deletion became a point of interest for investigators. When did she delete it? Before or after police became interested in her phone records? Was the deletion innocent, or was she trying to hide communications? Police requested Brooks Murray's records from Text Plus Inc., specifically her records between May 1 and 2, covering the crucial period before and during the disappearance. The documents reveal they received results from this request, but other details were redacted. We don't know what those records showed, if anything significant. One particularly intriguing detail emerged from the court documents. An affidavit sworn by Corporal Charlene Jordan Curl of the RCMP's Northeast Nova Scotia Major Crime Unit describes Brooks Murray providing police with a video recording on a SanDisk Cruiser Glide USB drive. The video was of a phone conversation between her grandmother Patty Pearson and Pearson's relative Darren Geddes. According to the document, Geddes claimed to know information about the disappearance of Lilly and Jack and had suggested in social media postings that Brooks Murray may have been involved in their disappearance. However, the document stresses that this is his theory, not established fact. The document says Geddes also suggested that he might know the location of the children, although police talked with him and say he has not provided context as to why he has this theory. So here's someone, a relative of the maternal grandmother, publicly speculating on social media that the mother was involved, claiming to know where the children are, but unable to provide any substantive information when questioned by police. Corporal Curl wrote in the document, "It is unknown if Darren Geddes knew he was being recorded. I believe information provided in the recording could assist with locating the children by identifying further investigational avenues for police to pursue." The USB was given to police at the Bible Hill, Nova Scotia, RCMP detachment on June 26th, and the video of the phone conversation was made on the evening of June 21st. What was on that recording? What did Geddes say? Did it lead anywhere, or was it just another dead end in a case full of them? The documents don't tell us, and this lead, like so many others, appears to have gone nowhere. As 2025 drew to a close, the investigation remained active but with no major breakthroughs. 8 months had passed since Lilly and Jack disappeared. Chief Superintendent Dan Morrow, Nova Scotia RCMP Criminal Operations Division, said in a year-end interview with Global News that in his 33 years of policing, He's never seen a case like it. I've never seen it across my career, Morrow said. But while it's rare, the part that isn't rare is the complexity of the case, like why it's taking so long. Because these investigations have to be done in a methodical approach. This acknowledgement from a senior RCMP officer with over 3 decades of experience underscores just how unusual this case is. It's not just that the children are missing, it's that every aspect of the case presents complications and contradictions. Anyone who has children, obviously from a parental aspect, it deepens that level of concern internally. What happens if it was my child, for instance, Morrow said, when asked about the attention the case has received. Just that initial reaction from a parental perspective would escalate that concern, obviously. This human element, the understanding that these are somebody's children, somebody's grandchildren, drives both the public fascination and the investigative commitment. Then, in January 2026, 8 months after the disappearance, newly unsealed court documents revealed allegations that would add yet another layer of complexity to an already complicated case. The documents provided additional context on the relationship between Brooks Murray and Martell in the lead-up to the children's disappearance. In those court documents, there are details of an interview conducted by police with Brooks Murray. She discusses her relationship with Martell, saying she moved in with him on his mother's property in Lansdowne around August 2023. When asked about the nature of their relationship, Brooks Murray alleged abuse. Malahia said he would try to block her, hold her down, and once he pushed her, the document said. These allegations, coming to light months after the disappearance, painted a picture of a household with domestic tension. Martell denied the account of physical abuse emphatically. "I did not ever abuse Ms. Brooks Murray," he wrote in a text message to the Globe and Mail. He described the allegation as a personal attack that unfairly casts suspicion over him when he's been the only one raising awareness about Jack and Lilly. "If I remain in the public eye as a monster, the public's choice is guilty until proven innocent," he wrote. He added that neither he nor his family had anything to do with the children's disappearance. The abuse allegation has not been tested in court, and Martell has not been charged with any offense. These remain unproven allegations, significant because they're part of the investigation record, but not proven facts. RCMP Staff Sergeant Rob McCammon confirmed the nature of the relationship between Brooks Murray and Martell at the time of the disappearance is part of the investigation. "I'm not going to comment on anything being a factor, but I will say that any situation like that would be considered and followed up on by our people," said McCammon in an interview. When asked if any of the children's family members are considered suspects in this case, McCammon said there are no suspects he can identify at this time. "I wouldn't say anybody's a suspect," McCammon told CBC News on January 15, 2026. "Again, we continue to gather information, whatever evidence that we are able to find, and we'll make our decisions based on that." This careful language is typical of ongoing investigations. Calling someone a suspect has legal implications, so police are cautious. But the statement suggests investigators are keeping all possibilities open. Criminologist and former police officer Michael Arntfield, who is not working on the Sullivan case but has commented on it, said he's surprised the investigation has not turned criminal. In his experience, missing persons cases are generally deemed suspicious if they are not found after about a week. Investigators are still sort of pussyfooting around whether or not foul play is involved, and whether this should be a strictly criminal investigation, he said. "I don't have all the facts, but I will just say, it is novel in terms of these types of investigations, particularly dealing with 2 children. This outside expert opinion reflects what many have wondered. How can children be missing for 8 months, with virtually no trace, and the case still be classified as missing persons rather than criminal?" McCammon said, "Once investigators have gathered all the necessary information, we'll make decisions on any criminality that may be relevant to the case. So the possibility of criminal charges remains open, pending the completion of the investigation." The investigation continues to this day, here in January 2026. RCMP investigators have stated the case remains classified under the Provincial Missing Persons Act and has not moved to a criminal investigation, as there are currently no reasonable grounds to believe a crime has occurred. This is the official position. No reasonable grounds means that despite months of investigation, despite over 1,000 tips, despite extensive interviews and forensic analysis, investigators have not found sufficient evidence to conclude a crime was committed. Cindy Byers, RCMP Nova Scotia Communications, provided a statement that captures the current state of the investigation. The investigation into the disappearance of Lilly and Jack Sullivan continues. To date, investigators have managed more than 1,050 tips, resulting in over 1,340 distinct investigative tasks. The investigative team remains committed to pursuing every credible lead and determining with certainty what happened to Lilly and Jack. Over 1,000 tips, over 1,300 investigative tasks. This represents an enormous commitment of resources and personnel. Police have reviewed over 8,000 video files, conducted 75 interviews, and involved RCMP units from multiple provinces. The case remains under the Provincial Missing Persons Act and has not yet been classified as criminal. RCMP Staff Sergeant Rob McCammon, the acting officer in charge of major crime and behavioral science, insists police are still making progress with the case, and he's confident that in time it will be resolved. "This is not a file that just sits at work, and you pick it up in the morning," said Staff Sergeant McCammon. The question of how two young children could just disappear has kept the RCMP head of major crime in Nova Scotia awake for many nights. But what really happened to Lilly and Jack Sullivan? Let's examine the theories that have emerged, because in the absence of definitive answers, theories are all we have. Theory 1, they wandered into the woods and succumbed to the elements. This was the initial belief of law enforcement and remains a possibility. The scenario is straightforward. Two young children, possibly with autism spectrum characteristics, known to roam according to their mother, simply walked out the back door early in the morning of May 2nd. They wandered into the dense wilderness surrounding their home and became lost. The evidence that supports this theory includes the pink blanket pieces found in the woods, the boot prints matching Lilly's boots discovered in the forest, and the terrain itself, which is unforgiving, with thick brush, steep banks, and cold water sources. A 4-year-old and 6-year-old could easily become disoriented in such an environment. Children can cover surprising distances when lost, sometimes traveling miles before exhaustion or the elements stop them. But there are significant problems with this theory. The search was massive and thorough. Over 160 trained searchers combed 8.5 square kilometers. Cadaver dogs, which can detect human remains even when buried or submerged, found nothing. Thermal imaging from helicopters should have detected body heat if the children were alive in the first few days. Even if they had died quickly from exposure or injury, their bodies should have been located. Daniel Martel himself said, "I was ahead of the helicopters, ahead of the drones, screaming loud as I can, until my throat hurt, running through water that was up to my waist. They hate being wet and cold, so they immediately would have come back into the house." If the children were in those woods, dead or alive, the statistical likelihood of finding absolutely no trace of them beyond a blanket and some initial footprints after such an intensive search seems astronomically low. Search and rescue experts will tell you that finding a body in wilderness is not as difficult as television makes it seem, especially when you have the resources that were deployed here. Theory 2, they were abducted. This theory has several variants. The most common is stranger abduction. Someone, for reasons unknown, took the children from the property or encountered them after they wandered off. The witness reports of a vehicle coming and going multiple times during the night of May 1st into May 2nd initially fueled this theory. Multiple neighbors reported hearing a vehicle, one reported seeing lights. The timing is suspicious, just hours before the children were reported missing. There's also the testimony from a witness who reported seeing two children walking toward a tan or gold sedan on May 2nd. Could this have been Lilly and Jack being led to a vehicle? The fact that the children's biological father was immediately suspected by the mother also suggests abduction was on her mind, even though he was quickly cleared. But the RCMP has stated repeatedly there is no evidence of abduction. They reviewed surveillance footage extensively and found no evidence of any vehicle activity during the time witnesses claimed to hear one. This is a significant contradiction that has never been adequately explained, but investigators have chosen to believe the surveillance over the witness accounts. Cody Sullivan, the biological father, was quickly ruled out. He hadn't seen the children in 3 years, lived hours away, and passed a polygraph. There's no evidence of anyone else in their lives who might have wanted to take them. No custody disputes beyond the biological father who was cleared. No suspicious persons reported in the area. No Amber Alert was issued because police saw no evidence supporting abduction. The lack of any sighting of the children since May 1st at the Dollarama, despite massive publicity and a $150,000 reward, suggests they aren't alive and being held somewhere. Theory 3. Someone in the family knows more than they're saying. This is the darkest theory, and the one that has fueled endless speculation online and in true crime communities. It's the theory that something happened to the children in or near the home, and the story about them wandering off is a cover-up. The evidence that makes people suspicious includes several factors. The allegations of domestic abuse between Brooks Murray and Martell raise red flags about the household environment. The admitted drug abuse by Martell is concerning. The reports of multiple black eyes on the children that were documented are deeply troubling. The fact that a child protection worker had visited the home after concerns were raised by the school suggests authorities were already worried about the children's welfare before they disappeared. The witness reports of a vehicle coming and going multiple times during the night are particularly significant if true. What would explain a vehicle leaving and returning 5 or 6 times in the middle of the night? The piece of pink blanket found in a trash bag at the end of the driveway is odd. Why would part of Lily's blanket be in the trash? The fact that the children were kept home from school for multiple days leading up to their disappearance could be seen as suspicious, though illness is a common reason for this. However, both parents passed polygraph tests. So did the grandparents and the biological father. If someone in the family is responsible, they've either beaten the polygraph, which is possible but not common, or the truth is more complicated than simple guilt or innocence. Martell has been vocal in the media, maintaining his innocence and his commitment to finding the children. His descriptions of searching desperately through waist-deep water, screaming until his throat hurt, either represent genuine anguish or remarkably skilled deception. Brooks Murray has been much less public, declining most interview requests. Is this simply a private person dealing with tragedy differently, or does it indicate something else? The relationship between the parents fractured immediately after the disappearance. Brooks Murray left the property and blocked Martell on social media within days. Was this caused by the stress of the disappearance, or did she suspect him of involvement? Some have speculated that perhaps one parent knows what happened but the other doesn't, which could explain why both passed polygraphs. But this remains pure speculation without evidence. RCMP Staff Sergeant Rob McCammon has been clear when asked if family members are suspects, stating, "I wouldn't say anybody's a suspect." Again, we continue to gather information, whatever evidence that we are able to find, and we'll make our decisions based on that. Theory 4. The children are alive somewhere. This is the theory that gives hope, however faint, to those who love Lilly and Jack. Perhaps they were taken by someone who wanted children. Perhaps they're being cared for somewhere, unaware of the massive search that has been underway for months. Perhaps they were trafficked, though child trafficking of this nature is extremely rare in Canada. The relative, Darren Geddes, who claimed to know information and suggested in social media posts that Brooks Murray might be involved, hinted that he might know the children's location. But when questioned by police, he provided no substantive information or context for his claims. This appears to have been either attention-seeking behavior or genuine but unfounded suspicion. But the reality weighs against this theory. 8 months later, there have been no confirmed sightings despite massive publicity. The case has been covered nationally and internationally. The children's faces have been on missing posters everywhere. A $150,000 reward has been offered. If they were alive and being held, someone would have seen them, recognized them, and reported it. No ransom demands have been made. No communication from anyone claiming to have the children. No evidence whatsoever that Lilly and Jack are still alive. The statistical reality of child abduction cases is grim. When young children are abducted by strangers, they are usually killed within the first few hours. When they're taken by family members, they're usually recovered relatively quickly. The longer children remain missing, the lower the probability they're still alive. The reality is, we don't know. And that's what makes this case so agonizing, so compelling, and so frustrating. 2 children, 6 and 4 years old, vanished on the morning of May 2nd, 2025, from their rural home in Lansdowne Station, Nova Scotia. Despite one of the most intensive investigations in the province's history, despite over 1,000 tips from the public, despite hundreds of hours of volunteer search efforts, despite cutting-edge forensic technology and the commitment of multiple RCMP units, despite extensive media coverage and a substantial financial reward, we are no closer to knowing what happened to Lilly and Jack Sullivan than we were on day 1. What we do know with certainty is limited but important. The last verified sighting of the children outside their home was May 1st at 2:25 p.m. at a Dollarama store in New Glasgow, captured on surveillance footage. They were with their mother, stepfather, and baby sister. They appeared normal, alive, 2 children on a shopping trip. They returned home that afternoon and evening. At 9 p.m., they were put to bed. Sometime between 9 p.m. on May 1st and 10:01 a.m. on May 2nd, they disappeared. 2 pieces of a pink blanket belonging to Lilly and some boot prints matching her footwear are all that remain as physical evidence. The stepgrandmother claims she heard them playing and laughing on the swings around 8:50 a.m. on May 2nd. If this is accurate, they vanished within approximately 1 hour. Neighbors reported hearing a vehicle coming and going multiple times during the night of May 1st into May 2nd, but surveillance footage doesn't confirm this. The contradiction has never been explained satisfactorily. Both parents passed polygraph tests administered 10 days after the disappearance. The biological father, who hadn't seen the children in years, also passed his polygraph and was quickly ruled out. Grandparents who were tested also passed. The case remains classified as a missing persons investigation, not a criminal one, because investigators state they have no reasonable grounds to believe a crime has occurred. And yet, 2 children are gone, completely vanished. No bodies, no additional evidence beyond the initial findings, no credible sightings, no resolution. The family continues to live with unbearable grief and unanswered questions. Brooks Murray and Martell's relationship fractured under the immense pressure, with the mother leaving the area shortly after the disappearance. The paternal grandmother, Belinda Gray, has become a public voice calling for transparency and answers, stating her belief that the children are no longer alive. The community of Lansdowne Station and the broader Pictou County region remains shaken. This kind of mystery doesn't happen in small, tight-knit rural communities. Everyone knows everyone. Children don't just vanish, except they did. Candlelight vigils continue to be held. The missing posters remain posted throughout Nova Scotia. On what would have been Jack's 5th birthday in October, the community gathered to remember both children and to renew their commitment to finding answers. The investigation remains active and ongoing. RCMP Staff Sergeant Rob McCammon has stated that investigators are making progress, and he's confident the case will eventually be resolved. This is a very active, intensive investigation, led by a dedicated team of investigators in the Northeast Nova Scotia Major Crime Unit with assistance of agencies from across Canada, McCammon said in a statement. We're continuing to engage every resource available to help locate Lilly and Jack and determine the circumstances of their disappearance. The $150,000 reward offered by the government of Nova Scotia remains in effect. Anyone with information about the disappearance of Lilly and Jack Sullivan is urged to contact the Pictou County District RCMP at 902-485-4333. To provide information anonymously, you can contact Nova Scotia Crime Stoppers toll-free at 1-800-222-TIPS, that's 8477, submit a secure web tip at www.crimestoppers.ns.ca, or use the P3 TIPS mobile app. Every piece of information, no matter how small or insignificant it might seem, could be the key to solving this mystery. But as of January 2026, 8 months after they vanished, Lilly and Jack Sullivan remain missing. Their case remains open. Their faces continue to stare out from missing posters across Nova Scotia and beyond. 6-year-old Lilly with her bright smile and her love of girly things. 4-year-old Jack with his curious eyes and his fascination with bugs and dinosaurs. 2 children who were best friends, not just brother and sister. 2 children who played on swings and went to dollar stores and lived ordinary lives until the morning they became the center of an extraordinary mystery. Somewhere, whether in the dense forests of Pictou County, whether in a place investigators haven't yet searched, whether in a scenario no one has yet imagined, is the answer to what happened on the morning of May 2nd, 2025. Until that answer is found, until Lilly and Jack are located or the circumstances of their disappearance are conclusively determined, their story remains unfinished, their case remains unsolved, and their family, their community, and everyone who has followed this heartbreaking case remains in a state of painful uncertainty, caught between hope that somehow they'll be found alive and the grim statistical reality that suggests otherwise, between the desperate need for answers and the frustrating absence of them, between the intensive efforts of law enforcement and the complete lack of resolution. This case isn't just a mystery to be solved. It's a tragedy that has touched thousands of people. 2 young lives, interrupted or ended, we don't know which. A family, completely shattered by loss and uncertainty. A community, forever changed by the knowledge that children can vanish without a trace. And a question that echoes across Canada and around the world. What happened to Lilly and Jack Sullivan? If you have any information, no matter how insignificant it might seem, please contact the authorities. The RCMP tip line is 902-485-4333. Crime Stoppers can be reached anonymously at 1-800-222-TIPS. You can also submit tips online at crimestoppers.ns.ca or through the P3 Tips app. These children deserve to be found. Their family deserves answers. Their story deserves resolution. If this case has moved you, if you believe these children and their family deserve justice and closure, please share this investigation. Let people know about Lilly and Jack Sullivan. Keep their story alive. Keep the pressure on for answers. Subscribe to Forensic Disconnect for more in-depth investigations into cases that demand our attention, cases that deserve to be solved, cases that should never be forgotten. Hit that like button to help this video reach more people. Leave a comment with your thoughts, but please, be respectful. Remember that real people are suffering through this nightmare. Most importantly, never stop asking questions. Never stop seeking truth. Never forget Lilly and Jack Sullivan. Because these aren't just names in a case file. These aren't just statistics. These are real children with real families who loved them and who wake up every single day not knowing what happened to the people they love most. Jack would have turned 5 years old on October 29, 2025. His birthday was marked with vigils and renewed appeals for information, but not with the joy of a child blowing out candles surrounded by family. Lilly, who loved girly things and playing with her brother, would have celebrated another birthday in March. Instead, her family marked the occasion with grief and unanswered questions. This is the reality of unsolved cases. Behind every cold case file, every missing person poster, every unresolved mystery, there are real human beings experiencing real suffering, waiting for answers that may never come, holding on to hope that becomes more painful with each passing day. The investigation into what happened to Lilly and Jack Sullivan continues. Investigators work daily on the case, following leads, analyzing evidence, building theories, and searching for that one piece of information that will break the case open. Staff Sergeant Rob McCammon has said this case keeps him awake at night, and that statement should tell you everything about the commitment law enforcement has to solving this mystery. These are professional investigators who have seen terrible things in their careers, and this case still haunts them. This is Forensic Disconnect, and we will continue to follow this case as it develops. We'll bring you updates when new information becomes available. We'll keep Lilly and Jack's story in the public eye, because that's what they deserve. That's what their family deserves. That's what justice demands. Thank you for watching this investigation. Thank you for caring about these two children. Thank you for helping keep their memory alive and the search for answers active. Remember, every case deserves to be remembered. Every victim deserves a voice. Every mystery deserves to be solved. Lilly and Jack Sullivan deserve justice. They deserve to be found. They deserve to come home. Until that day comes, we'll keep investigating, keep questioning, and keep their story alive. Stay safe out there. And if you know something, say something. Your information could be the key to bringing Lilly and Jack home.